Page 157, Blitzen's Revenge. "Control your boy," one of them shouted. Nicholas ignored him. He was concentrating hard on the metal chains that kept little Kip shackled to the cage on the sleigh. He felt his father's hand grab his arm and tried to pull him away. "Come on, Nicholas. You're embarrassing us both now." "Put him in the cage, too," suggested Toivo. "We can't put a boy in a cage," said Anders. "You already have," said Nicholas. "Or don't elves count?" "No, son," said Joel. "Of course they don't count. They're elves. The elves were quite happy to put you in prison, remember?" Nicholas thought about Father Vidal, remembered the fury in his voice and how frightened he had felt. Yes, but what? For a moment, Nicholas wondered what he was doing. Why did he care? Then he looked inside the cage. Little Kid was fretting, his face twitching all over. "You're an elf," whispered Nicholas urgently. "You've got magic in you. Use your powers." Little Kid began to cry. "I can't. It's impossible." "You can't say that word. You're too young to swear." Little Kid looked at him, tilting his head to one side. Nicholas knew that he was asking a lot of a young elf. Little Kid was, well, little. It was hard to work out elf ages, but he couldn't have been much more than 5 years old. Maybe his magic hadn't developed yet. And even if it had, Nicholas knew it wasn't that easy. Without the confidence of a single clear wish, magic was useless. Making impossibilities possibilities was harder than it looked. The elf closed his eyes, straining. The man started to jeer. "It's Christmas Eve," urged Nicholas. "Can you feel it? There's magic in the air. Come on, little Kip. Use your dreamic powers. You can do it." "No," came a tiny voice. "I can't." "You can. I know you can. You're an elf. You can do it." Little Kip frowned hard. "Come away, Nicholas. I mean it," said Joel, grabbing Nicholas's hand. There's a strange tinkling sound. The little elf was changing color with the effort, his face becoming as purple as a plum. Then, clank. Nicholas saw one of the iron chains between the elf's handcuffs snap like toffee. Then another. And another. There was only one more. "This is it, little Kip. You're doing it." "Look, he's escaping." "Stop your sorcery, you pointy-eared little freak." Toivo spat at the elf. "Or I'll shoot you dead." Toivo raised his crossbow and pointed it at little Kip. "I will not," said the elf, which to the man sounded like Calabash Animbo. "And stop your gobbledygook," added Toivo. Somewhere above, a bird flapped away from a tree. "A dead elf's no good to us," said Joel. "A dead elf is better than an escaped elf." Toivo spat again. "If it makes another move, I'll shoot it." Nicholas pulled his hand away, fast, from his father's grip. He had never felt less like his father's son. He darted to the front of the cage. He could hardly control his breathing. The fear was intense. He looked up at Toivo and his dark, desperate eyes, which seemed to contain the night. "Well, I'm not going to let you." "Don't tap me, little boy. I could kill you too." Toivo's voice didn't falter. Then he gasped. "Look!" Nicholas turned and saw a whirl of snow and hooves and hot breath. The forest was rumbling as though filled with thunder. It was a huge reindeer pounding toward them. "Blitzen!" called Nicholas, fearing for the creature's life. "Leave him to me!" shouted Anders. He fired an arrow, and it whistled through the air, fast and straight. Blitzen kept galloping, even faster, seemingly toward the arrow. But at the last minute, he lifted his head up, and his whole body with it, leaving the ground at a steep angle. Climbing through the air as if on an invisible heel, brushing past feathery snow-covered pine branches as he rose. Nicholas watched Anders's bow and arrow aim higher as the reindeer pawed the sky, antlers silhouetted against the moon. "Don't shoot it, please. He is my friend," pleaded Nicholas. Joel looked at his son's and white, thin face. Then he looked at his own left hand. At his half finger, "Life is pain," he said sadly. "But it's also magic, Papa." Joel ignored him. You need to calm him down, Nicholas. He'll be safer if you call him back down where we can see him. We won't shoot him, will we, man? We'll capture him and take him to the king. Sure, he'd like to see a flying reindeer. Anders lowered his arrow. Yes, call him down. Blitzen! Called Nicholas, wondering if any of them could truly be trusted. Come down from the sky. It's safer. And the reindeer seemed to understand, because a minute later he had landed in the little clearing, chest heaving and eyes shining with exertion. This is Blitzen. Please don't hurt him, said Nicholas. The reindeer nuzzled his neck. Lake Blitzen, said Thomas, smoothing down his reindeer coat. Nicholas stroked the creature's neck, and Blitzen stared at Anders, making a noise between a grunt and a growl. It's all right, Blitzen. It's not going to hurt you again, said Nicholas, wishing he could truly believe what he was saying. But even as he was saying it, Toivo was raising his crossbow. No, Toivo, cried Joel. Nicholas tried to think, looking around him, as if the answer could be found somewhere in the scary darkness of the forest. There was only one thing to do. Okay, we'll come with you on the adventure. I would love to meet the king. He is lying, said Toivo. Joel looked into his son's eyes, and in that instant Nicholas knew that he understood as perhaps only a father can. No, he's not. You aren't. Are you, Nicholas? Because if you are lying, you will be killed, and there will be nothing I can do about it. No, Papa. Nicholas took a deep breath. I'm not lying. I've changed my mind. I was being stupid. The elves locked me in prison with the murderous troll. I don't owe them anything. There were a few moments when no one spoke. The only sound was the cold wind whispering through the trees. Then Anders thumped Nicholas on the shoulder. Good boy, you've done the right thing, hasn't he, Joel? Yes, said Joel. He always does. Well, good. That's settled. We better get some rest now, said Anders. Big day tomorrow. He put his arms around Thomas and Toivo. The boy and the reindeer must sleep away from the elf creature, just to be safe, said Thomas. I'm fine with that, said Nicholas. Joel wasn't entirely happy. But wait, what about the elf? What if he uses his magic to escape? One of us needs to stay on guard to make sure he doesn't. Good point, said Toivo, rubbing his eyes. I'll do it. Toivo, you're too tired, said Anders. You've drunk too much cloudberry wine as always. We need someone else. I feel wide awake, said Joel. I'll do it. It's my son who's been causing trouble. I feel I'm to blame. All right then. That makes sense. Wake me at first light and I'll take over. Anders pointed to the pines on the other side of the campfire, beyond the clearing toward the ravine. You can sleep over there. He patted Blitzen on the back, smoothed his snow-damped fur. Sorry, old buddy. No hard feelings about the arrow, huh? Blitzen thought about this, and as he did so, took a wee on Sanders's long johns. Hey! Cried Anders, and Thomas burst into laughter. Anders couldn't help laughing too, which caused the other men to join in. And so it was that the men all went back to sleep by a still glowing campfire, and Nicholas and Blitzen lay down amid the trees beyond them, and Joel stayed sitting in front of the cage containing Little Kip. Whether Little Kip had given up on his chances of escape, it was hard to tell, but Nicholas certainly hadn't stopped dreaming of helping him. He snuggled into Blitzen, their bodies warming each other as the voices of the men became silent. Happy Christmas, Blitzen, he said glumly, but the reindeer was already asleep. Page 166. Something good. Nicholas lay awake, staring up at the full moon for a long time. As he was drifting off to sleep, he heard a noise, no more than a whisper, lost in the wind. He looked over and saw his father slowly pushing the sleigh toward him and away from the camp. The elf couldn't have been very heavy because the sleigh was moving easily. Little Kip was inside the cage, silent and wide-eyed, holding onto the bars. What are you doing? Whispered Nicholas. Joel put a finger to his lips, then took the rope harness he'd been using to pull the sleigh off his shoulders and went over to Blitzen to put it over his head. Nicholas couldn't believe it. I knew you were going to try and free the elf, said Joel. Which is really a terrible idea, by the way. Really, really terrible. But it is Christmas, and you're still my son, and I want you to stay alive, so help me. Nicholas leaned in toward Blitzen. Stay calm, he said in a voice so quiet the reindeer might not even have heard him. Blitzen slowly got up and stood stock still as they put the harness over him. The fire had died now, and the men were still sleeping their drunken sleep. Nicholas felt nervous, but also strangely happy and relieved. His father still had goodness in him after all. One of the men, maybe Toivo, thought he was too dark and distant to tell, rolled over and grumbled a little. Nicholas and Joel held their breath and waited for him to settle. The harness was on. Okay, we're ready, whispered Joel as the wind dropped. It was as if the forest was training to listen to their plans. Now, get on your reindeer and fly away. Papa, please come with us. No, I'll slow you down. Blitzen's strong and fast. You could be on the sleigh, making sure the little kid is okay. You can't stay here. They'll kill you. Toivo, yes, it was definitely Toivo, was clearly visible now, his long skinny frame moving as he lay in the dark. Nicholas had never seen his father look frightened before, and the fear he saw in his father's face quickened Nicholas's heart. All right, said Joel. I'll get on the sleigh. We've got to go. Quick! Nicholas climbed on Blitzen's back. Then he leaned forward to whisper in the reindeer's ear. Come on, boy. As fast as you can. Let's get out of here. Now Toivo was properly awake. He was kicking at the boots of the other men and urging them to wake up. They're escaping! Blitzen heaved toward the clear line between the trees, struggling as he switched from walk to trot. Come on, Blitzen, you can do it, boy. Come on, it's Christmas Day. Use your magic. Nicholas heard a strange hushed whistle. To his horror, he saw an arrow speeding through the air. He ducked, saving his head by a fraction. Blitzen was having difficulty breaking into a gallop with the weight of the sleigh and the cage and little Kip and Joel and Nicholas. A second arrow whooshed by. Blitzen gained speed, but not enough. The trees were too close together. He weaved dangerously through them. Nicholas, holding on for dear life, turned to see the sleigh tilt to the left, nearly tipping Joel off. Nicholas could hardly think, his brain a chaos of trees and speed and fear. Arrows and stones were now flying through the air. And then the very worst thing of all happened. Nicholas heard a scream behind him, an agonized howl that tore through the night. He turned to see his father, who was standing at the very edge of the sleigh, with a piece of thin feathered wood jutting out from his shoulder. Blood was already leaking out onto his shirt. Papa! Nicholas cried as another arrow whistled by his ear. Then Nicholas felt Blitzen's weight pressing upward. It was happening. But as they started to leave the ground, a rock hit Blitzen's chest. Perhaps it was the shock or the pain, but he weakened momentarily. He tried to tilt back and lift higher as they went over the men's heads, but Nicholas could see they were in trouble. They were going into the trees and not over them. His face was whipped by the snowy branches, and he choked on pine needles as arrows continued to fly by, streaking black lines in the dark. Come on, Blitzen, cried Nicholas, urging the reindeer on to defy gravity. But poor Blitzen was struggling. He crashed back to earth, but kept galloping, trying to lift off again. It's too heavy, moaned Joel, in agony as his hand clutched his shoulder. Nicholas knew his father was right, but he noticed that the trees up ahead were thinning. It'll be all right, shouted Nicholas. Come on, Blitzen. Nicholas felt Blitzen's feet tread on nothing but air, but soft floating upward. But still it was no good. His whole body was tight with effort, and the sleigh was dragging them back down. Nicholas tried to use his own magic. Fear had turned his mind into a cyclone of thoughts, so he couldn't hold the wish for long before it flew away like paper in the wind. You don't understand, shouted Joel. The ravine, the river. And then Nicholas understood. It wasn't just the trees that stopped ahead of them. It was the land too. It disappeared into nothing, like a horizon that was too close, too low. They were only yards away from a deep, deep, dark drop toward the river. You won't be able to cross. The only way is to fly, shouted Joel. It's too heavy. But Nicholas wasn't giving in. With every nerve in his body, with every molecule inside him, he hoped and prayed and urged the magic, his own and Blitzen's, to work. Come on, Blitzen. Come on, boy. You can do it. Fly. The reindeers rose again into the air, but only slightly. They crashed into more branches. Joel was holding tightly onto the cage now. Nicholas heard little Kip whimper of fear. Oh no, said the elf. Oh no, oh no, oh no, oh no. I'm weighing you down, said Joel. I'm going to jump. The words ripped at Nicholas like teeth. No, no, Papa, don't. He turned around. Joel's face was full of another kind of pain now, the pain of farewell. No! I love you, Nicholas, Joel yelled. I want you to remember me for something good. No, Papa, it'll be... They were right at the edge now. Nicholas felt it before he saw it. The sudden lightning, the quickening of Blitzen's pace, as Joel let go of the cage and fell to the ground below. Nicholas, tears bursting from his eyes, saw his father curled up in the snow, getting smaller and smaller, and finally disappearing in the darkness, just as his mother had disappeared into the darkness of the well. Nicholas felt terrified. As it dawned on him, he was all alone in the world now. Blitzen, with a lighter load and determined to take his cargo to safety, soared high above the ravine, fast and strong, away into the sky. Page 173, Riding Through the Air. The sadness Nicholas felt then was incredible. To lose someone you love is the very worst thing in the world. It creates an invisible hole, and you feel you are falling down, and it will never land. People you love make the world real and solid, and when they suddenly go away forever, nothing feels solid anymore. He would never hear his father's voice again, never hold his strong hands, never see him wear his red hat. The tears on Nicholas's face froze as he flew through the cold air. It was the saddest birthday, the saddest Christmas ever. He clung to Blitzen's back, feeling his warmth, only occasionally looking behind him to make sure the sleigh and the cage were still there. With his ear to the reindeer's fur, he could hear the blood pumping around Blitzen's body. It seemed to replace the sound of galloping. He had been crying since his father had jumped off the sleigh. Had he died as he had fallen? Or had Anders and Toivo and all the others reached him first? Either way, he feared the result was the same. He would never see his father again. He felt it, a howling emptiness inside his heart. Slowly, the sky became light. I'm sorry, said a small voice behind him. It's all my fault. Nicholas had hardly heard little Kip say a thing, except, oh no, until now. Don't be sorry, Nicholas shouted back, wiping a tear from his eye. None of this is your fault. A little time went by. Thank you for saving me, came that same small voice. Listen, I know you think my father was a bad human, and it was a bad thing he did, but there was good too. He was just weak. He had no money. Humans are complicated. Elves too, said little Kip. Nicholas stared into the whiteness of the snow clouds all around him. Even climbing through small chimneys or flying through the air was easier than believing in life. Yet, as Blitzen galloped on, Nicholas knew that he had to carry on and return little Kip to his home. He just had to. You are a friend, said little Kip. They flew over the mountain, and this time Nicholas could see Elfham straight away. The street of 7 curves, the tower, the village hall, the wooded hills, and the lake. By the time Blitzen landed right in the center of the reindeer field, a crowd had already gathered. Nicholas wasn't scared, because nothing in the world could scare him now. He had lost his father. What terror could the world offer that was worse than that? Even when, after climbing off the reindeer, he saw the crowd part to make way for Father Vadal, who was marching toward them, he still didn't feel fear, just emptiness. So, the son of Joel the woodcutter has returned, said Father Vadal. Nicholas nodded toward the wooden cage. What is going on? I've brought little Kip back to Elfham, announced Nicholas, loud enough for everyone to hear. It's true, Father Vadal, said a smiling white-whiskered elf walking toward them. It was Father Topo, closely followed by little Noosh. Nicholas had saved little Kip. It's the news we've all been waiting for. Yes, said Father Vadal, offering Nicholas a reluctant smile. Yes, I suppose it is, but now the human must go back to the tower. The crowd roared in disagreement. But it's Christmas Day. Let him be. Father Topo shook his head. No, not this time. Enough of this goodwill, Father Topo. No more words out of you. The human must return to the tower. That is it, final. The crowd of elves grew angrier, and a couple of them threw some extra hard pieces of gingerbread at Father Vadal's head. Father Topo looked stern for the first time in his life. You will have an uprising on your hands. The human boy is a hero. And the elves started chanting, Hero, hero, hero. You ungrateful elves, shouted Father Vadal at the top of his voice, which was very, very loud. Don't you realize all I've done for you? How safe I've helped you become by ending goodwill and joy. I quite like goodwill, come to think of it, said one elf. And joy wasn't so bad either, said another. And I miss pickle dancing. Me too. And proper pay. 3 chocolate coins isn't enough to live on. And being nice to non-elves. And on it went, the list of complaints. And Father Vadal, as the democratically elected leader of Elfham, realized he had no choice. All right, he said. Before we decide what to do with the human boy, let us first take little Kip home. And an almighty roar rose up through the crowd, and many began pickle dancing illegally. Nicholas looked around and cried again, but this time his tears had a little bit of happiness in them, the kind of happiness that can only be felt by being around the joy and goodwill of elves.